Now, I'm delighted to introduce our next speaker, Ranisha Clarke. Ranisha is Managing Director, Communities and this year she celebrates 20 years at Lendlease. During this time, she's demonstrated a real knack for matching business needs and market potential. So I know she'll be offering unique perspectives into the Australian housing market for us. Please give a warm welcome for Ranisha Clarke, everyone.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you too for the inaugural Up and Out Greater Western Sydney Housing Summit and Luncheon. Firstly, I too would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past and present, and recognise that as Lendlease and as an industry more broadly, we have a unique opportunity to incorporate the knowledge, talent and wisdom of First Nations people in the development of the built environment. I'd also like to acknowledge some of the dignitaries in the room, including the Honourable Rose Jackson, Minister for Housing and Homelessness, as well as Paul Scully, Minister for Planning and Public Spaces, and acknowledge to all of the local mayors that we have with us here today. So champions of industry, government, city shapers, community creators, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure to be here with you all today and to speak such a prevalent and important topic, housing affordability. Across the world post the Second World War, home ownership became a beacon of the nation's prosperity as the populace demanded it form a key pillar of one's individual liberty. During this time, Australia's home ownership spiked from 46% in 1947 through to 72% in 1966 within urban areas. Our then Prime Minister boasted the fact that Australia built 388,000 homes within the first 5 years of the 1950s and vaunted this as being a record unsurpassed anywhere. And whilst these ideals were heralded more than 70 years ago, comfortable suburban living is still front and centre of the nation's psyche and a yardstick of our commitment to the greatest nation in the world. Thus, we must acknowledge the pressing reality of the housing crisis that is evaporating the Australian dream from our youth. The soaring demand for homes has resulted in escalating prices, pushing home ownership further away from the grasp of everyday Australians. Our cities are bursting at the seams, and the lack of housing has sparked a downward spiral, leading to increased homelessness, overcrowding, and social disparity. Last October, Treasury forecast 235,000 net overseas arrivals for the financial year. The figure was closer to 400,000. On Australia's current trajectory, by 2056, Sydney and Melbourne will approach global megacity status of around 10 million residents each, with Brisbane and Perth projected to grow to the scale of Sydney and Melbourne today. This intake is warranted, as the Business Council of Australia confirmed, Australia is competing against other countries for the best and brightest, and with a slow or complex migration system, we'd be putting the nation at a disadvantage. They go on to say rightly that migration should not be the scapegoat for poor planning and the failure to deliver housing supply. We need these people, but in order to accommodate this vast swell and cope with the increasing local demand for homes, we need to increase supply. As Anthony Albanese agreed in Parliament, it's about zoning, it's about density, and it is about making sure that we increase supply because that is what will make the big difference. What he has acknowledged is that Australia cannot afford to rule out any forms of residential development, and thus it is crucial that we embrace a holistic approach that combines both infill and greenfield developments. Chris Minns has said we need a whole-of-community approach involving industry and every level of government, where ambitious targets are welcome. The former RBA Governor, Philip Lowe, warned that all levels of government must reform land zoning to boost housing supply and avoid short-term policy interventions. Everyone here understands the government's push to realise greater density with infill developments. Revitalising city centres, promoting sustainable living and reducing the strain on the production of infrastructure are just some of the merits of infill development, but we cannot rely solely on building up to meet housing demand. We require a widespread and agnostic solution, which is where greenfield development comes into the picture. Greenfields opens up vast opportunities to create affordable, family-friendly neighbourhoods with ample open spaces, parks and recreational areas. These communities cater to the needs and preferences of individuals and families across the entire housing spectrum. And we're not talking about urban sprawl. Take our Fig Tree Hill community as an example, which you saw earlier in the video. It is a development that can realise thousands of homes, which are all within 10 minutes of Campbelltown's education, health, retail, cultural and transport hubs. And on top of this, only 30 minutes to the South Coast beaches. But despite a chronic housing shortage, bureaucratic inertia is holding up the delivery of these much-needed homes. We recently had to delay registration of 450 lots while we wait for Transport for New South Wales to approve fully funded upgrades to Appin Road. At the same time, the delivery of 3,300 new homes is on hold at Gilead, opposite Fig Tree Hill, while we wait for rezoning approval. We see firsthand that customer demand is coming from owner-occupiers who are typically couples with growing families or often multi-generational households who live or work in the local area. 80% of residents say Campbelltown feels like home, and 79% say they feel like they belong in the area. In other words, their choice is to buy a house in the Campbelltown area. And it's choice which is at the heart of the great Australian dream. It's about enabling people to make the best decision for themselves and their family. They often have very deep connections to their local community. In fact, what we have seen is our customers are attracted to our legacy in Western Sydney. Our first community project was in Bradbury in Campbelltown, and we now have stories of adults who grew up in a Lendlease community and are continuing that tradition. And naturally, we listen to those stories. It would be a fallacy to simplify this current housing debate to going up versus going out. I too, myself, know how greenfield development can deliver amazing community outcomes and include appropriate density. I call Kellyville home in Western Sydney. There I'm connected to easy, safe public transport. There's open space, lazy streets, community parks. I have ample backyard space for my family, which is all provided with a wide range of housing options throughout the area. As some of you may know, there are even pockets of greater density, helping to deal with the affordability, all placed where it makes sense. Quite rightly, a lot of the focus has been on how we make our cities more livable and affordable, especially for our key workers. But as a passionate believer in our suburbs, as you've heard, and the productivity of these places, I'd add we need an equal focus on other CBDs and the role they play in providing housing that is both affordable and desired in areas like Penrith, Liverpool, Rouse Hill and Campbelltown. Our commitment to diversity should extend beyond the two paradigms. It is essential to recognise the diverse life stages and circumstances that our population experiences. Some may be starting families, seeking affordable homes that offer space, and looking for a connection to nature. Multi-generational households are becoming increasingly common, with families choosing to live together to provide support and care for each other. Offering housing options that cater to these evolving family structures is pivotal and plays a crucial role in providing much-needed housing for the burgeoning population. The balance between infill and greenfield developments ensures that we address Australia's dire housing crisis while investing in the future of our cities and regional areas alike. As we know, greenfield development can be an expedited process. It can be delivered quicker than infill or brownfield development with limited to no adverse reaction. It can be bespoke. It can be the solution required specifically for that area. It can be a blank canvas, and it can be cost-effective. Greenfield developments also produce places where people feel connected. One of our developments, 84% of people would not want to live any closer to the CBD, with a similar percentage stating how the area, quote, feels like home. We cannot afford to rely solely on infill developments if we are to truly tackle the housing crisis head-on. The scale of the challenge demands a comprehensive response, and the synergy between infill and greenfield developments is the way forward. We must embrace a balanced approach. An equal focus on greenfield developments is the key that unlocks the door to a brighter future for our nation. We have seen how governments and industry can come together in the face of a pandemic, and I feel the same level of seriousness and alertness needs to be paid to housing as we truly have a growing crisis upon our hands. We've shown how that can work during the pandemic. It's not COVID-19 now, but why can't we take the same approach where we put forward the parties, the government bodies, the industry partners that are capable of addressing the solutions? The same 1950s Prime Minister I quoted earlier also stated, "It is because we can look back with the judgment of experience that we can look forward to new tasks with confidence and determination. We are inspired by our conception of a great and unlimited destiny for our great land." I have tried to put before you something of what we see the future tasks and the ways in which we would set about them. As addressing housing crisis here in Australia requires a united effort driven by foresight, leadership and partnership, and this room assembled here today is that. Thank you.